Welcome back, and in this segment we will be talking about a lot of interesting topics. We will be talking about renewable energy, but also we will be talking about environmental architecture, and I'm happy to have with me in the studio Dr. Ahmed Abdin. He's an architect as well as a professor in, of course, the field of architecture, and I'm happy to have him with me today in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm very glad to be with you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Talking about renewable energy in Egypt, and it has always been a challenging issue, actually, and how we can take benefit of this, especially that when it comes to renewable energy in Egypt, Egypt is rich with its resources when it comes to this, and definitely these days we need it more than any other time. Many of the countries across the globe, they moved on immediately to this, but still in Egypt we have many challenges, and still we have to admit that this is something will be preferable even for the environment as well and sustainable development. So where are we today from all what is going on? Are we on the right track? Are we still need to move more? Where are we exactly?
Actually, we are starting the right track. For renewable energy, Egypt is very rich in renewable energy. It has a multi-disciplinary area of renewable energy, and we are realizing that this is energy for the future. And for that, we have, of course, we have hydro energy with high dam and so on. We have wind energy, and we have in Gargada, Zafrana, one of the biggest renewable energy farms for wind. And we have actually solar energy, which is all over Egypt. And this is like a gift of God. So what we need to do is to use this in a very rational way, and at the same time to use it very efficiently. For that, we have to start by not only just saying renewable energy, but efficient renewable energy and efficient energy. And that means we have first to thank God. We just go make our building, say, thank you, God, and get all the benefits of God, channel it into our buildings. At the same time, we have to rationalize the use of energy before we start paying money for having renewable energy. Meaning, we could have, for example, a house which is not efficient in renewable in energy as a whole. So in order to satisfy this house need, we have to have very big solar collectors for energy and pay too much money. So before we start saying renewable energy, we have to have energy efficiency, economize our energy consumption, and use it. There's a question here, actually. Would we just rationalize it without knowing what is it actually exactly? If we just look at for example, a typical residential house, we'll see that this residential house would use around 30% in lighting, and we'd use like around 10% for air conditioning and fans, and we'd use like another 10% for water heating. Some of these areas is very easy to satisfy and is very economical. And this is what we should start with. Something like water heating, for example. Water heating, it would cost very little and would save 10% of the energy used in housing. If we say that Egypt have like 40% of its energy consumption is used by residential sector, which is houses, it means for water heating, we are gonna reduce energy demand substantially. And this is actually within reach for the whole population, whole of Egypt, and so on.
Yes.
So that's one area. The second area, which is like generating electric energy. So generating electric energy, we have to rationalize. For example, maybe people don't know that we have, like, God give us lighting with efficiency of 5,000 lighting units in the open space, in outside, around any house. And inside we need something like, in living rooms, like 150. Yet we still switching the light on, the electricity light on, and using 30% of our energy needs, and not letting this daylighting in. So if we let this daylighting in, we'll reduce 30%. That's another way. So that's how architects should do. In Egypt, we developed actually an energy efficiency building code. And this code is very efficient, very good. We started by residential, commercial, and now we are developing, about finished, the governmental energy code. So it's a call for the government to start applying this rationalizing of energy in their building. It sets the example, because you will have to know by example. So if they set the example and do it in the buildings, that would mean very big reduction in energy consumption.
Yes. Doctor, I'd like to move from energy for just a question and return back to it later.
Yeah.
It's about your own specialization, which is environmental design or architecture.
Yeah.
Would you tell us more, how can a design be environmental, and what are the components of such a thing, an environmental building?
Yes. Actually, environmental building means that the building itself is like intelligent. It can respond to the environment around it. So if there is a building within, for example, Aswan, would have its own characteristics and its own design different from the building in Cairo. And the building in Cairo, as I said, should really channel all the gifts of God into the building itself. For example, we have our roofs, which we don't use. These roofs can be used in so many things. Can be used, for example, for green roofs, meaning planting the roofs and generating some income for even the low income housing. And that's applied in some area in Gamaleya, for example. So the people can take their daily needs, like all these herbs and some vegetables, from the rooftop. They don't have to spend money, just very little investment, and they have that. They can, for example, use this solar heating and solar energy and so on in the roofs. They can have lights in. For example, some building in 6th of October I designed, like Misr University for Science and Technology, beside the Fuad. It's having all the roofs letting light in, just like Alexandria Library, for example. It's having free lighting. So the whole activity doesn't depend on electric supply. And at the same time, it's using energy. It's saving 30% of its consumption needs for other Egyptian needs, like generating jobs and like doing other sort of things. So this is an area. At the same time, actually, we do that at university. We teach our students from the second year in Faculty of Engineering to use this energy code, to use this environmental design and so on. Also, when you design a building, you have to respond to the climate. So you have to get the building comfortable. We go nowadays in the building, some people say this modern building is not as comfortable as the old buildings. It's true in some cases because it's not designed the right way. If we visit, for example, old Cairo, we have very old buildings. I take my students for old Cairo, lecturing on the buildings themselves. And showing them how it works, how it's lit naturally, how it's air conditioned naturally, and so on. I design my house, for example, a big villa, I bet between 50 to 100 pound electricity, and that's very little. My neighbor pays 1,000 pounds or 2,000 pounds, but that's by using all these sort of things and being responsive to the climate. Around the buildings, there is very good environment, like cold air during summer, it's high up. So we can make in the building shafts to collect air from up, channeling it into the building, cooling the building free.
By the way, this has been always the design, talking about the good old days and ancient times.
Yeah.
And we used to see this in many of the houses or museums that we used to visit in Egypt, that they took this into consideration. Unfortunately, today, they are not taking this into consideration, and definitely the design itself, maybe sometimes when I traveled abroad, for example, to certain areas, I can see that even if there is a new house in a place that has to do with cultural heritage, it is built with the same design of the area. Unfortunately, it happens a lot in Egypt that you will find in an area, just as you mentioned, it's not as it is, but for example, in Old Cairo, you will find someone who's going to build a modern building just in between, which is not good, or you will not feel that when you look at it, it has something different, it's not good.
You are very right, Nashwa. Actually,
I hate this. I don't know why architects, they insist on doing this. Actually, they are destroying the cultural heritage of the area itself.
Yeah. First of all, actually, it's not all the architects. It's some culture. We have actually in Egypt some problem with culture, culture awareness. And awareness in Egypt is very a hot subject. People not aware. They don't realize that this is their culture. That within the culture there is some visual.
Like Korba area, for example,
Absolutely.
in Heliopolis.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm chairing the urban harmony committee for Heliopolis. We have some problems, actually.
Yes.
One of them, we preserve the very good examples. And at the same time, when we have a new design nowadays, not all time, the building in Korba is a little bit old. They were before the law 144 for year 2006. So they didn't confirm. They didn't comply with the law. But after that, when the building, a new building is coming into one of this area, like new areas like Heliopolis was, we call it Heliopolis Oasis actually, when it was started. And we have like, these buildings has to be revised with a certain committee to guarantee urban harmony within the area. So that's done for the new designs. For the old designs, we have to preserve it and conserve it. And we have to set the things. So there is, within the law for urban harmony, there is 3 grades. And in Heliopolis, as a matter of fact, there is a decree for a core area, where an area where no like new building will be built except if it is revised completely by this committee and supervised in its construction by architects who would have a very high experience in doing it. So it is there, but you can see it all over. Because, for example, when you go to Old Cairo, you will find in this side of Moise Street, beautiful buildings, nicely preserved, and it's like rehabilitated and so on, and the news, like Sahimi House, like Gafar House, like Sinari House, like it's houses actually. You can go to, for example, Sultan Hassan Mosque, where there were some sort, it was like 2 weeks ago, it was Goma Bey was there. Marvelous building. The best artist in the world, Mr. Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright, came to Egypt like 1953 or something like that, and said, I would hope that in my life, I would design a building which conform and respond to its environment like this Sultan Hassan. So there's plenty lessons. That's why we take our students to let them learn from this building on the spot, on the building. We have very unique opportunity that all this very big open museum in Egypt is there. How can we use it? This is, we have to spread the awareness and to make people to use it.
Yes.
So within this building, it's very nicely, you go in the, when it's so hot, like around 40 degrees in Cairo, inside it's 25 comfortable. So this is like how it responds. So that's one of the things of responding to the climate, responding to the environment. For example, we have within the design of the buildings, nowadays, plenty people make very little saving on making the walls very thin, and if they add like 2% of the cost of the building to build a thick wall, you will have a comfortable building inside. But you don't in Cairo, because we don't apply the energy efficiency building code, which we have already done, and one of the best in the world. So if it's really enforced, then we'll have something like that, and you will have your house very comfortable, and you will have saving energy, like at least we can save 10% of the energy, the country energy consumption and energy demand by this sort of applying it to the buildings. So it's a matter of actually very big importance to apply it today in Egypt. It's a duty for Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Planning, in order to cooperate together and apply these things in an environment. So when we walk in the street, we find clean, easy, nice environment to live in.
Actually, you've started working on that with the United Nations Development Project. It was part of the governorates of the third region, Sharqiya, Port Said, Ismailia, Suez, and South Sinai.
Yes.
Now, when you worked with these areas, did you change the design in each area according to the climate? Tell me more about that experience, please.
Absolutely. When we start planning the city, you start with like seeing what is the environment around it. What is the topography? What is the sort of earth available over it? What is this topography will form, for example, flash floods, which would just make problems. You will see the environment, the climate, how this climate will affect designing the city and the street. How can we get our streets and our city washed of all this pollution coming from cars, coming from industry, coming from human activities, and the wind will sweep it away. How can we design the building itself to use and thank God? How can we thank God for all these gifts and channel it into the city and channel it into our buildings? How can we make the buildings comfortable? So, for example, if we're designing a building, maybe in Sharm el-Sheikh, we have demand there, different from both sides. Maybe all of them will be touristic buildings. However, in this area, we're having marine environment, we're having special winds, we're having different in temperature, in wind, in humidity, in solar radiation, and so on. So we can use them. This is gifts of God. This is energy. The cleverness of artists or human being is how to use this to their advantage and how to make it some positive and good energy and not to let it go. So within each of these buildings, we give examples. Only examples, actually. We need like pilot projects in every city, in the major cities at least. So people, when they are walking, they will realize, oh, this building looks different. Why? They will ask, they will question, they will have increased mind. So they will learn more about that. And that's really okay.
Well, we need to talk more about that in more detail, but unfortunately we have to wrap up today's segment. Thank you very much, and episode. Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Abdin, Professor of Environmental Architecture and Architecture in general. Thank you very much for this interview, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Rasha, for this presentation. Thank you, Nashwa, for giving me a chance actually to put this information to the public to have awareness.
And hopefully we'll be having more talk about that. Thank you. Well, but now it's time to wrap up today's episode. But before I end the episode, I have first to thank my colleague and friend Nashwa Rashid. Thank you very much,
Nashwa.
Thank you,
Rasha. Thank you all for joining us in this interesting episode, because I believe it was a real interesting one. Thank you all for joining us, and remember to join us again tomorrow, same time, with our colleagues for more on The Breakfast Show. Till then, thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more coming up on Nile TV International.